Good morning, dear students. We start our translation. Our lecture number 6 is devoted for today to Russian revolutions of 1917. So, our today's topic is Russian Revolution. Today, I will tell you about February Revolution of 1917, about period of time between February to October, and about October Revolution of 1917. Russian revolutions is not easy for understand, but we shall try to clear all the processes which happened during this period of time in Russian Empire and then in Russian Republic. Let's have a look to our literature. The Cambridge History of Russia, Volume 2, pages 655-669, Volume 3, pages 94, 113, 114, up to 139. In Michael Court, A Brief History of Russia, pages 152-157. Well, as a preface, by the beginning of the 20th century, in the most developed countries of the world, there were no autocratic monarchs anymore, and in Russia, the power still remained autocratic. The Emperor Nicholas II ruled Russia. In autocratic Russia, a lot of things depended on the identity of the Tsar, his ability to find sensible assistance ministers. Romanovs ruled moreover 300 years over Russia, and Tsars often became leaders of the nation in fight against overseas aggressors and intruders and internal contentions. Let's remember Patriotic War of 1812 as an example of a time of troubles. Nicholas II was the weak governor. At him, the autocracy could not solve the aggravated country problems. In 1940, Russia was forced to enter unprepared World War I. Its burden appeared it cannot do to the Russian Empire. More and more, the abuse between the simple people and the power grew. And in this difficult situation, Nicholas II did not manage to become the leader of the nation. It appeared powerless to stop the approaching accident. And we should take to account an identity of Gregory Yefimovich Rasputin, the imperial friend. He was born on January of 21, according to the new style, of 1869, and he died on the 16th of September of 29 of September, according to a new style of 1916. He was a peasant of the village Pokrovsk, the Tobolsk province, gained the world popularity thanks to the fact that he was a friend of the Tsar's family, of the last Russian Emperor, Nicholas II. In the 1900 Among certain circles of the St. Petersburg society, he had reputation of aged man and a healer. Rasputin's proximity to imperial family irritated many and became one of the factors of discontent with the imperial power. Here is a portrait of Gregory Rasputin. Gregory Rasputin was one of the most disputable figures of the beginning of 20th century in Russia. Beginning of his life. In youth, Rasputin was ill much. After the pilgrimage to the Verkhaturi monastery, he addressed religion. In 1893, Rasputin wandered on the holy cities of Russia. He visited Mount Etz in Greece, then in Jerusalem, met and started contacts with many representatives of clergy, monks, widowers. In 1890, he married Praskovia Fedorovna Dubrovina, the same pilgrim peasant who gave birth to its three children, Matrona, Varvara, and Dmitri. In 1900, he went to a new wandering to Kiev. On the way back, long enough lived in Kazan, where he got acquainted with their father Mikhail, concerning the Kazan Spiritual Academy, and arrived to St. Petersburg, to the rector of Spiritual Academy, Bishop Sergei Starogorodsky. In 1903, the inspector of the St. Petersburg Academy, Archimandrite Feofan Bistrov, meets Rasputin, having presented him as well to the Bishop Germogen Julganov. In St. Petersburg since 1904, the house of Gorokhova Street, where Rasputin lived, with windows of the yard. In 1904, Rasputin, probably with the assistance of the Archimandrite Feofan, moved to St. Petersburg, where he gained, at a part of high society glory, aged man, foolish man of God, that fixed in eyes of the St. Petersburg lied a position of saint. The father Feofan told about wanderer to daughters of the Montenegro prince, subsequently the king, Nikolai Negush, Melitsa and Anastasia. Sisters also told to the empress of a new religious celebrity. There passed several years before it began to be distinguished from crowd of the man of God, obviously. In December of 1906, Rasputin submits the application of the highest name on change of surname of Rasputin New, referring to the fact that his many fellow villagers carry the same surname, because of what there can be misunderstanding. The application was satisfied from the side of Nicholas II. You can see that Rasputin was a very strange person. A lot of people respected that he was a talented person. He was a very talented healer. Maybe he had a talent to hypnosis. Gregory Rasputin and imperial family. In 1908, Tsarskaya Selo, Rasputin with the Empress, 4 children and governess. Date of this personal meeting with the Emperor is well known. On November the 1st of 1905, Nicholas II wrote down in the diary. November 1st, Tuesday, cold windy day, from the coast rose until the end of our channel and an equal strip of both parties. It was very taken all morning. Had breakfast, took a walk, at 4 o'clock went to Sergeyevka, had tea from Militsa and Stani, got acquainted with a person, Gregory from Tobolsk, kept within the evening, was engaged much and spent everything with Alex. There are also another mentions of Rasputin in Nicholas II diaries. The first case of Rasputin, Listovstvo, on 1907. Listovstvo was the name of the special sectarianism group. Confidential case of Tobolsk spiritual consistory of the peasant Gregory Rasputin. 1907, on a denunciation of 1903, the Tobolsk consistory opened case on Rasputin, who was accused on dissemination of the false doctrine similar to Listovsky and formation of society of followers of the false doctrine. Business was begun on September the 6th of 1907 and finished and approved as the Tobolsk Bishop Antony Krzavin on May the 7th of 1908. Initial investigation was made by the priest Nicodemus Gluchavetsky on the basis of collected facts. The archpriest Dmitry Smirnov, the member of the Tobolsk consistory, prepared the official report to the Bishop Antony with the application of the review of case in point of Dmitry Mikhailovich Berezkin, the inspector of Tobolsk Theological Seminary. Secret supervision of police. In 1909, the police were going to send Rasputin from St. Petersburg. However, Rasputin outstripped it and itself for some time went home to the village Pokrovsk. In 1910, his daughters, whom he arranged to study in gymnasium, moved to St. Petersburg to Rasputin. According to instructions of the Prime Minister Stolypin, for Rasputin for several days external observation was established. On December the 16th of 1911, Rasputin had a skirmish with the Bishop Germogen and the celibate priest Eleodor. The Bishop Germogen, acting in the union with the celibate priest Eleodor Trufanov, invited Rasputin to himself to farmstead on Vasilievsky Island, in the presence of Eleodor convicted, having several times struck with a cross. Between them, the dispute and then a fight was started. In 1911, Rasputin voluntarily left the capital and made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. According to the order of Minister of Internal Affairs Makarov on January 23 of 1912, for Rasputin, the external observation, continuing to his death, was established again. Attempt to kill Rasputin was done by Hyonia Guseva on June 29 of 1914 on Rasputin in the village of Pokrovsk. Attempt was made. Stabbed him a stomach and half. Hyonia Guseva, who arrived from Tsaritsina, wanted. Rasputin showed what suspects of the organization of attempt of Eleodor, but could not produce any evidence of it. On July the 3rd, Rasputin was transported by steamship to Tumen for treatment. In the Tumen hospital, Rasputin remained till August 17 of 1940. The investigation of case of attempt lasted about a year. Guseva in July of 1915 was declared insane and exempted from criminal liability, having placed to a psychiatric clinic in Tomsk. On March 27 of 1917, according to personal instructions of Kerensky, the head of the temporal government, Guseva was released from prison. Murder of Rasputin. Here is several photos illustrated as the consequences of assassination to Gregory Rasputin. Rasputin is killed on the night of December of 29 of December, according to a new style of chronology of 1916, in Yusupov Palace on Moika in St. Petersburg. Conspirators were Felix Yusupov, Vladimir Puryshkevich, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich. Data on murder are contradictory, were confused by both murderers and pressure upon the investigation of the Russian, British and Soviet authorities. Yusupov changed indicators several times. In police of St. Petersburg on December of 1916, being in exile in the Crimea in 1917, in the book of 1927, given under the oath in 1934 and in 1965. Puryshkevich's memoirs, then Yusupov's of his version were originally published. So, we should conclude that Rasputin was one of the most famous reasons of the reducing of the popularity of Tsar's power, of imperial power. And revolutionary situation started at the beginning of the 1970s. In the years of war, life of the population worsened. There were interruptions of the supply of the cities with food. Inflation began. Fighting against it, the government declared introduction of a food allotment, but the situation unchanged. In the cities, strikes which took place not only under economic but also under the political slogans began. What were the reasons of Russian revolutions, February Revolution? First of all, on February of 23, on March the 2nd of 1970, February Revolution lasted. So, the first reason was suspense of an agrarian question, a lack of land for peasant, preservation of landowner land tenure, the high rent for the land, preservation of the special taxes as a form of rent. The second reason was suspense of the working question, political lawlessness, low standard of living, difficult working conditions. The third reason for February Revolution was suspense of the ethnic question, discontent of society with the participation of Russia in World War I at the front, desertion, fraternization with Germans, war led to hunger, diseases. And the fifth reason, political instability, preservation of autocracy, weakness of the Russian parliamentarism. The emperor did not recall a state with decisions, Dumas. So, we can find a lot of reasons for revolution, February Revolution. But despite all the reasons, Russian population was tired from the troubles, from the economic crisis, from the political instability. And Russian population of Russian Empire wanted changes in the country, in Russia. Driving forces of revolution were, first of all, workers, liberal bourgeoisie, soldiers, students, and intellectuals. That's why we can call this February Revolution as bourgeois democratic revolution, because a lot of the estates of Russian society took part in revolution. A revolution started in Petrograd. As you remember, St. Petersburg was renamed onto Petrograd in 1914 during the beginning of World War I. In the beginning of 1917, the discontent of the people amplified. Interruptions on delivery of food to the capital led to the beginning of riots of grain benches. During the 18th of February, the strike at the Putilovsky plant began. On February of 23, there took place women's demonstration under the slogans "Down with war, down with autocracy." Nicholas II, from the staff of Russian commandership in the Russian-German front, ordered to the Governor-General of Petrograd Khabalov to stop disorders in the capital. Here is a picture, here is historical photo illustrated as a complicated situation on the streets of Petrograd during February of Revolution. Habalov, a chief of St. Petersburg or Petrograd garrison, Habalov gave the warrant of arrest of 100 people from the left-wing parties. In the afternoon on February 27, fire was opened at protesters. In the same day, the decree of the Tsar suspended work of the State Duma. But this day became also critical during the revolution. It was a crucial stage of the revolution. Parts of the Volynsk regiment came over to the side of insurgent people. Here is a picture of soldiers of Volynsk regiment as a part of Petrograd garrison. They took their arsenal, the Peter and Paul fortress, Winter Palace, the Admiralty. Political prisoners were released from prisons as a result of February Revolution. And as a result of February Revolution, diarchy was established in Petrograd as the center and capital of the country. On February 27, members of the State Duma decided not to disperse and declared creation of interim committee for management of the capital and state. In the same time, the executive committee of the Petrograd Council, led by the Menshevik Chaidze, was created. The majority in council was occupied by Mensheviks and social revolutionaries. Here is a photo of the members of interim committee of State Duma. Here is a portrait of Chaidze, the chairman of the executive committee of Petrograd Council. Diarchy continued. On the 1st of March, the provisional government, led by Lvov, was created. Milukov was a foreign minister. He was appointed as a foreign minister. Guchko was appointed as a military minister, Minister of Military Affairs. The deputy of Petro-Soviet, Alexander Kerensky, became a Minister of Justice. On the 1st of March, Order number 1 was issued, under which practically Executive Committee of the Petrograd Council subordinated to himself army. Therefore, the real power in the country belonged to it, Executive Committee of Petrograd Council. But leaders of council considered that if revolution was bourgeois character, then in power there has to be a bourgeoisie. February Revolution led to abdication of Nicholas II. Before that, the Tsar, there was a picture of final fracture of its power and prestige, its full isolation, and any confidence in support from army was gone. If heads, it in several days came over to the side of enemies of the emperor. The sovereign, these might, with 1st of March, up to 2 o'clock, long did not sleep. In the night of March, Mikhail Rodzanko, March the 2nd, Mikhail Rodzanko asked the commander of the Northern Front, a General Ruzsky, to convince Nicholas II to abdicate in favor of his son Alexis. Front commanders and the fleet almost unanimously supported this offer of Rodzanko. On the 2nd of March, Nicholas II signed abdication, but not in favor of his son Alexis and the younger brother Mikhail. Mikhail, under pressure of political leaders of State Duma and Executive Committee of Petrograd Council, made the decision a throne not to accept. The autocracy in Russia was overthrown. So, you should remember this day, the 2nd of March of 1917. This day, Nicholas II abdicated and monarchy, autocracy in Russia was overthrown. What were the results of the February Revolution? The main result, the principal result, was falling of autocracy. The second result was the establishment of diarchy. Diarchy existed until the July of 1970, from March up to July of 1970. Provisional government was formed the 2nd of March 1970. The Petrograd Council of Working and Soldiers Deputies, it was formed by the 27th of February of 1970 in structure of social revolutionaries and Mensheviks. What was the policy of new power? A policy of new power was very contradictory. On the 3rd of March, the declaration which stated the principles of domestic policy of provisional government was published. So, provisional government declared political amnesty, introduction of democratic freedoms, cancellation of estates, preparation for convocation of a constituent assembly, replacement of police with national militia, with the elective administration, elections of local government on the basis of secret and direct vote. The government declared determination to wage absolute war. The social and economic policy was formed of accounting of need of continuation of war. So therefore, the 8-hour working day was forced to enter council. The solution of the question of the land was postponed. The state monopoly for bread was ended and its stocks were taken under control of power. Provisional government was very unstable. There were several crises during the time of existence of provisional government. Let's remember first crisis. First crisis of provisional government took place on the 2nd of March of 1970 and lasted up to the 6th of May of 1970. First crisis was called a cabinet crisis. The highest point of first crisis of provisional government happened in April of 1970. An occasion was a speech of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Paul Milukov. He declared determination of Russia to finish obsolete war. An answer was meetings and requirements of resignation of Milukov and Guchkov. So, Foreign Minister and Ministry of Military Affairs. The second provisional government from the 6th of May up to the 24th of July, the second crisis was in June of 1970. It was also a cabinet crisis. An occasion was preparation for approach at the front against Germans. Approach failure. The July armed performances in Petrograd under the slogans "All power should belong to councils." These performances, armed performances, were organized with the crucial role of Bolsheviks, headed by Vladimir Lenin. So, provisional government suppressed these performances with the help of armed forces, but it was accompanied with the cabinet crisis of provisional government. The third crisis of provisional government took place in August of 1970, a cabinet crisis also. It was connected with the Kornilevsky mutiny. The purpose of suppression of Kornilevsky mutiny was dictatorship establishment of Alexander Kerensky. As a result of introduction of dictatorship of Alexander Kerensky, the mutiny was suppressed. But power of Alexander Kerensky was very weak, and the consequent events shown us the capture of power by Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. So, during the time of existence of provisional government, 4 cabinet crises took place, and the last cabinet crisis took place in 25 of October, was the last for provisional government. It was a capturing of power by Bolsheviks, and it was October Revolution. So, what was the social and economic situation in Russia between February to October of 1970? What tell us the facts about? From March to October, more about 800 plants and factories were stopped. Sharply coal mining, smelting of cast iron and steel went down. Railway communication is paralyzed. Public debt of Russia by October of 1917 reached over 50 billion golden rubles. It was a huge figure. The salary was reduced by 40–50% in comparison with 1913. Prices for products of prime necessity grew several times. Cards of food were entered. So we should conclude that social and economic situation was very poor in Russia between March to October. Discontent grew. Total number of striking in September, October reached a figure of 2.5 million people, almost 8 times more than in the spring. Peasants occupied landowners' estates, smashed estates, did not submit to the authorities. It was a very bad situation for temporal government, for provisional government, because provisional government was incapable to control situation inside the country. And nobody inside the country, almost nobody inside the country believed to provisional government. The popularity of provisional government and a level of support to provisional government was very low. Actually very low. Situation was critical at the front. Non-compliance with the order, fraternization with the opponents, with the enemies, Germans. Desertion became the frequent phenomenon. And you can see at the slide what does it mean, fraternization of the Russian and German troops. Russian and German soldiers organized meeting between each other, and they usually said like this: we are workers and peasants, and you are workers and peasants, and we have nothing to divide between each other because we are colleagues, we are peasants and workers. So we should avoid war, we should avoid confrontation between each other, and we should proclaim each other as brothers. And a friendship should be between us, between Russian and German soldiers. As a result of this fraternization, as a result of the reduce of the Russian troops' ability to move forward, Germans occupied Moosund Islands, pushed aside the Baltic Fleet to the Gulf of Finland. The threat to Petrograd became more and more real, for account of the reduce of ability of Russian army to resist to German advance. So you should remember, you should recollect the main reasons of the low popularity and the growth of social discontent, low popularity of provisional government. So, war, political crisis, economic crisis, growth of social discontent led to the falling of the authority of provisional government and simultaneously led to the growth of popularity of Bolsheviks. In sum, as a result, Bolsheviks win elections to the Petrograd and Moscow councils, and Bolsheviks got a majority among deputies of two councils in Petrograd and in Moscow. What should be conclusions? The government lost support in society. Unsuccessful policy in the government of Octobrists, Cadists, Mensheviks, social revolutionaries discredited. Bolsheviks increased their influence, their number grows in councils. Preparation for occupation of the political power began. And now I will show you several examples of the February revolutions in the arts. You can see at this slide several pictures. A title of the leftward top picture, Down with War. A crowd of people made a slogan, Down with War. A down leftward picture, February days in Moscow. And you can see that in Moscow, revolution was rather cruel and bloody, February revolution. A rightward top picture illustrates us down with an eagle. And I remind you that eagle was an emblem of Russian Empire. And at this picture, soldier, possibly sailor, crushes imperial eagle from from the top of this house. And the picture rightward down the rightward, dispersal of the worker demonstrations. Some more pictures leftward at the top. A meeting in soldiers' barracks. You can see and you can conclude that Bolshevik propaganda was very spread enough among soldiers, and even in soldiers' barracks, Bolsheviks leaders did their propaganda, very effective propaganda. As a result of the common spread Order number 1 issued by the Executive Committee of Petrograd Council, you can see a picture on the left side, on a low corner left side. Arrest of generals in February days of 1917. We don't know anything about destiny of this general, of this Imperial Russian general who was arrested in the February days of 1917. He was arrested because soldiers got an ability to arrest him according to the special order of the Executive Committee of Petrograd Council. And we don't know anything about his future destiny. Possibly he was terminated, maybe. Another picture rightward illustrated as execution of demonstrations and a storm of the arsenal of the Petrograd. Look at this slide. The next slide illustrates us a personality of Alexander Kerensky. As you remember from the August of 1917, Alexander Kerensky became a dictator. He got a dictatorship power. The provisional government did not possess real levels of the power. Law enforcement agencies, first of all army, supported another spontaneously created power, councils of working, country and soldiers' deputies, which in turn did not possess the legitimate power. In the country, there was a situation at which the provisional government was the power without force, and councils by force without the power. In the essence of the so-called diarchy also consisted. The condition of the diarchy proceeded till July of 1917, when the provisional government pulled together to Petrograd military units faithful to it, which showed the peaceful demonstration of workers which was taking place under the slogan "All Power to Councils." After this event, the course towards peaceful development of the revolution became impossible. The Bolshevist wing of RSDRP made the decision on overthrow of provisional government in the armed way. So, preparation and holding an armed revolt in Petrograd. In such situation, Bolsheviks, with their clear, intelligible slogans, "All power to councils," "World to the people," "Peace to the people," "Land to peasants," "Factories and plants to workers." These mottos, these slogans were very clear and easy to understand. And that's why Bolsheviks got a very high level of popularity among Russian population. So, as a result, they gained the increasing popularity in masses. Preparation and holding an armed revolt in Petrograd continued. At the very beginning of September of 1917, there went a by-election to the Petrograd Council. Bolsheviks received innate majority. Leo Davidovich Trotsky was elected the chairman of the Executive Committee of the Petrograd Council. On September the 5th, Bolsheviks received the majority in the Moscow Council. So Bolsheviks, for account of receiving majority in both councils, were ready for preparation of armed revolt in Petrograd and Moscow. Lev Davidovich Bronstein Trotsky. During the revolution of 1905, Trotsky became one of the heads of the Petrograd Council working deputies. It was arrested, ran from the reference, emigrated. He developed the theory of permanent revolution. The message about the February Revolution found Trotsky in the USA. On the 4th of May of 1917, he arrived home. He tried to create his own social democratic group in the beginning, but then supported Lenin. He supported Vladimir Lenin. Preparation and holding an armed revolt in Petrograd continued. In a propaganda arsenal of Bolsheviks, the slogan "All power to councils" appeared again. Lenin, here is a portrait of Vladimir Lenin. Lenin, who was with a legal status in letters to the Central Committee of Party of Bolsheviks, demanded to put on a waiting list day an armed revolt in St. Petersburg and Moscow, with area gaining the power or the throne of the government. On October 10, having returned to Petrograd, Lenin held a secret meeting of the Central Committee of Bolsheviks Party. 10 or 12 being present voted for Lenin's resolution as a proposal on an armed revolt. So Lenin demanded from the members of the Central Committee of Bolsheviks Party to vote for decision about organization of armed revolt. Only 2 members of Central Committee of Bolshevik Party, Zinoviev and Kamenev, disagreed with Lenin's proposal about necessity of armed revolt. So they voted contra Lenin's proposal. The course of an armed revolt was opposed by the prominent Bolshevik Kamenev. He was supported by Zinoviev. They conceded that revolution still has not enough forces. Capture of the power by Bolsheviks prematurely has to resolve an issue of the power of the Constituent Assembly. We are most deeply convinced that to announce now the armed revolt means to stake not only the fate of our party but also the fate of the Russian and international revolution. Chances of our party on elections to the Constituent Assembly are excellent. From their article in a newspaper, New Life. On October 12, 1917, at the Petrograd Council, the Revolutionary Military Committee, RMC, the headquarters for preparation of revolt, was created. Representatives of the left wing of Esserovsky party entered it. Besides Bolshevik, Leo Trotsky became the actual head of VRK, RMC in English. Here is a picture illustrated as expanded meeting of a Central Committee of Bolshevik Party headed by Vladimir Lenin. What was course of events during October Revolution of 1917? During this period, the activity of Bolshevik Party led by Lenin amplifies. In September-October of 1917, Lenin writes articles, addresses to the Central Committee. The title was very interesting of these articles: The Threatening Accident and As to Fight Against It, Marxism and Revolts. In these articles, Lenin proves and describes the plan of the revolt, puts forward slogans: the delay of death is similar. 10th and 16th of October of 1917 passes two closed meetings of the Central Committee at which the principal decision, on date of the revolt is made. It was defined on 25th of October. And that's why we can call this revolution as October Revolution. But don't forget this, that according to a new style of chronology, October Revolution took place on the 7th of November, but we still doesn't call it as November Revolution, and according to our history tradition, we call it October Revolution. So, Kerensky's government gives the order to occupy Smolny Palace and arrest leaders of the Bolsheviks, to take all important objects, to crush printing house of Рабочий Путь newspaper. On the 25th of October, collision between the revolutionary soldiers and sailors with troops of provisional government, Kerensky's cadets, took place. Here is a picture of Bolsheviks' Guard. Armed sailors. From address to the population of the Petrograd VRK, Central Military Committee. October of 24 of 1970, soldiers, workers, citizens, enemies of the people took at night the offensive. The Рабочий Путь and Soldat newspapers are closed, printing houses are sealed. The campaign of counter-revolutionary conspirators is directed against the All-Russian Congress of Councils on the eve of its opening, against the people. All garrison and the proletariat of Petrograd are ready to strike to enemies of the people crushing blow. VRK dispatched to all ships and regiments of the Petrograd garrison and vessels of the Baltic Fleet instruction number 1 about reduction of soldiers and sailors in combat readiness. On the same day, the armed groups of Red Guard and soldiers of Petrograd began to occupy bridges, mail, telegraph stations. Here is a picture illustrated as Smolny Palace in October of 1970. I remind you that Smolny Palace was a headquarters of Bolshevik Party during the time of October Revolution. Smolny Palace was a former place of residence of Smolny Institute of Noble Girls. Externally, Petrograd, former St. Petersburg, looked quietly. Theaters, restaurants walked across the Nevsky, couples walked. Neither processions nor demonstrations. Only the center limited the movement of trams. Lenin, living on the secret apartment of the outskirts, appeared out on a fight again. Tranquility of the capital deceived him. Where revolt? If each patience ran low, having put on a wig, having tied the cheek of his scarf, in the evening of October 24, he walks through the city in Smolny Palace. By the evening of 25 of October, practically all important objects of Petrograd were captured by Bolsheviks. At 19 o'clock of 25 of October, a revolutionary committee delivered the ultimatum to provisional government about delivery. In the same time, there begins work the Second Congress of Councils. Here is a picture of the collisions between a revolutionary Bolshevik squad, a Red Guard, so-called Red Guard, and cadets of Kerensky. Storm of the Winter Palace. As you do know, the Winter Palace nowadays is a place of residence of Hermitage in St. Petersburg, and during this period of time, in October of 1917, Winter Palace was a place of residence of provisional government. In the evening of 25 of October, the decision to storm the Winter Palace is made. At night, the cruiser Aurora, which entered Neva River, fires a volley that served as the beginning signal of storm of the Winter Palace. Protected the Winter Palace of the cadet and female battalion of Bochkaryova. At 2 o'clock in the morning, protection of the Winter Palace was given and the provisional government was arrested. Learn about it at a congress, and in protest, Mensheviks and social revolutionaries leave a congress. What was the destiny? What was the destiny of Alexander Kerensky? During a storm of Winter Palace, Alexander Kerensky was capable to escape. He escaped from the Winter Palace, and eventually he left Russia and he transferred to United States of America. He lived all the rest of his life in the United States of America. Several times Alexander Kerensky tried to leave the United States of America and come back to Soviet Union, but he was not allowed to enter Soviet Union because Soviet government refused him an entrance visa to Soviet Union, because in an eye of Soviet power, Soviet government, Alexander Kerensky was an enemy of Soviet power, responsible for arrests of Bolshevik leaders. The city fell down. In the morning, the 26th was moved away by guns. And yes, the soldiers headed near them. Sailors, Red Guards, reminded the fires only flaring here and these of recent events. During the revolt, no more than 20 people died, and that's why in our historiography, October Revolution is considered as bloodless. Here is a picture on a slide illustrated as arrest of provisional government members. An October Revolution was reflected in fine arts. On the left side, here is a picture Bolshevik, and winter it is taken. On the right side, you can see a picture illustrated as performance of Vladimir Lenin at the Second Congress of Councils, a speech of Vladimir Lenin, his famous speech. And on the right corner, at the bottom of our page slide, you can see a storm of Winter Palace. Another pictures shows us Vladimir Lenin at the Second Congress of the Councils, decree about peace, the power in councils, the peace to the people, and decree about land. All the decrees of new power, Bolshevik power, Soviet power, all the decrees were made with enthusiasm among population of former Russian Empire, primarily among the poorest people, peasants and workers. The place of revolution in poetry was contradictory. Some poets, such as Yesenin and Mayakovsky, differently treated the changes which happened to the country. For example, Mayakovsky had the most positive relation to revolution. He completely hosted all events which happened to its country, supported Bolsheviks, citizens for guns to weapon citizens. In this case, Mayakovsky allocated the big place to the poet whom compared to the sun. The poet is in many respects the ruler of the destiny. He helps people to acquire the correct truth, to shine always, to shine everywhere, about days of the last of column, to shine, and that's all. Here is my slogan and song. Alexander Blok enthusiastically hosted revolution as updating, as change, as a step to something new, the best. Blok reflected on understanding and the relation to revolution in the poem 12. So go a majestic step behind a hungry dog, ahead with a bloody fleck, and behind a blizzard it is invisible, and from a bullet it is safe. Gentle gait, snow scattering pearl, in a white nimbus from roses ahead Jesus Christ. Sergei Yesenin most difficultly hosted accomplished facts. He saw in revolution first of all laws of their homeland, former Russia, to replace with other country where the poet does not have the place anymore, came absolutely. The poet draws a conclusion. I accept everything, as there is everything except. It is ready to follow in the beaten out tracks. I will give all soul to October and May, but only I will not give Lyra of a darling. Yesenin saw up to the end also did not host revolution and furthermore did not agree to sing of it in a creativity. He reconciled to the fact that everything exchanged in its favorite country in his life, but to betray himself, and to place the lyra at service of war, it does not accept, this poet could not. Blossom young, also grow heavy body, you have other life, you have other time. And I will go one to unknown limits, the soul revolting forever having grown quiet. The Second Congress of Councils on October 25, October 27 of 1970. In the evening of October 25, the Second All-Russian Congress of Councils of Working and Soldiers' Deputies opened. The majority was made by the Bolsheviks and the left social revolutionaries, supporting the plan of an armed revolt. Mensheviks and the right social revolutionaries sharply condemned actions of Bolsheviks and demanded from Congress to begin negotiations with provisional government on formation of a new cabinet learning on all sectors of society. But Bolsheviks refused, as we know. And here is a picture illustrated as a second Congress of Councils. At this time, to a Congress there arrives Lenin. Work of a Congress is continued despite the lack of quorum. They appealed to citizens of Russia, in which appeared about overthrow of provisional government and transition of the power to Bolsheviks was read. The decree about the peace about the land is adopted. The new executive authorities, led by Lenin, the elected Council of People's Commissars. Definition of a date of elections to the Constituent Assembly. The second Congress of Councils adopted several decrees, as we know. Lenin at once suggested that the Second Congress of Councils to adopt decrees of peace about the land and about the power. The decree on peace proclaimed an exit of Russia from war. The Congress addressed to warring governments and the people with the offer of a universal democratic peace, so a peace without annexation and contributions. Here is a picture. Let us to imagine of how workers and peasants, soldiers appreciate the adoption of decree on peace. They appreciated it with glory and happiness. Here is a title page about the decree on peace. "242 local peasant mandates to the First Congress of Councils were the basis for the decree about the land. Peasants demanded cancellation of the private property on the land, establishment of a leveling land use with the periodic repartitions of the land. These requirements were the component of a socialistic revolutionary program. But Lenin perfectly understood that without support of the peasantry, it will be non-possible to hold the power in the country hardly. Therefore, they intercepted their agrarian program and social revolutionaries, and peasants followed Bolsheviks. Here is a title page, initial page about decree on land. And here is an attitude of peasants to Lenin's decree about the land. And you can see at this picture that Russian peasants very attentively listen to report about Lenin's decree about the land. On October 27, the Second Congress of Councils created the first Soviet government, Council of People's Commissars, which was one party. Lenin was elected its chairman, Trotsky became a People's Commissar of Foreign Affairs, Stalin the People's Commissar for Nationalities, Lunacharsky headed a Commissariat of National Education. Establishment of new power in Moscow. What was establishment of the new power in Moscow? The Moscow Bolsheviks created the party center, which established guard Bolshevists of the adjusted soldiers at the post office and telegraph, closed the editorial offices of bourgeois newspapers. In the evening, they integrated plenum of the Moscow councils of working and soldiers' deputies gathered. On it, VLK was chosen. The main fight was started for the Kremlin, where there was an arsenal. VLK Revolutionary Committee sent to the Kremlin of the commissioners. But the attempt to take out Wheaton was not successful, as fortress was blocked by groups of cadets. In the morning of October 28, believing that the city completely is in the hands of Committee of Public Safety, the Kremlin garrison gave it without a fight. Then all his soldiers and officers were shot. Here is a picture illustrated as collisions in Moscow. A revolutionary committee resorted to emergency measures. On October 27, the general political strike of the working Moscow plants and factories began. The meeting of representatives of military units of garrison was urgently convened. It expressed support to Revolutionary Committee and non-recognition of orders of the headquarters of the District and Committee of Public Safety. On October 29, situation in Moscow changed in favor of rising. A decision on shelling of strong points of the opponents, including the Kremlin, was made. Fire was opened by more than 20 tools. Counter-firing of insurgents from the Kremlin tools conducted also the cadet. In the afternoon on November 2nd, the Kremlin appeared in a dense ring of environment. The chairman of the Committee of Public Safety suggested to begin peace talks, peace negotiation. It meant capitulation. What was the establishment of new local authorities throughout Russia? In a number of the cities of the central industrial region, local councils possessed the real power prior to October events. They only legalized and strengthened the situation. The Western Siberia councils took the power at the beginning of December. By February of 1918, the power of councils was approved almost across all Altai, in February in Chita, Verkhnyoudinsk, then in Transbaikalia, and by March in the Far East. In Samara, Tsaritsyn, Sizra, and Simbirsk, the power of councils was established by a peaceful manner. In Kaluga, Tula, Kazan, Saratov, and Astrakhan, fight continued until the end of November, December, and here until January. In a number of the cities of the central industrial region, local councils possessed real power prior to October events. Let's have a look to our map. This map illustrated as establishment of new local Soviet authorities throughout Russia. And what were results of October Revolution? The main thing you should know that it was establishment of the power of Bolsheviks led by Lenin. The government of Bolsheviks lasted for 74 years. Then in 1932, Stalin went a holiday. On November the 7th day of the Great October Socialist Revolution. That's all I should tell you about two revolutions which took place in 1917. February Revolution, which led the abdication of Nicholas II and the end of autocracy in Russia, and October Revolution, which led to transition of power from provisional government to new Bolshevik government. Questions? Have you any questions? A great task to the chiefs of your groups. Please send me on my email a list of present students. If you have no questions, so good luck. Good luck and see you next Friday.